Hey, looks like we are live here. Let me just double check. I think we've got, yeah, looks like we're live. All right. Hi, welcome back. Nick here. It is another Friday. If you were here from this morning, welcome back. If you're joining us for the first time, hi, I'm Nick. I work at the Digital Arts Experience, and we are currently hosting a bunch of various programs to help people not go too star crazy in the home, also educate on various different topics. I tend to do animation and visual effects and a little bit of game design, which is actually what I'm doing today. So this particular live stream is a little bit different. I am not going to be teaching anything software specific because it's been a long day. It's been a long week. Been running around. I thought it would be cool to kind of just take a little bit of time to work on a personal project that I've been kind of going back and forth on at home, and to get some feedback and whatnot. We do have a live chat here, so if anyone wants to pop in and ask a question or something or discuss while I'm going through it, the chat is open, so feel free to say hi. I will do my best to keep an eye on it. Let's see. So what is the project? So as the title may suggest, a Harry Potter RPG. So if you're not familiar with role-playing games, they are just what they sound like. You take on the guise of a character, you can go on adventures, or in this particular case, go to school and hopefully not get eaten by a banshee or something. Hey, Rob's in the chat. Hi, Rob. I'll say hi back. Good, I'm glad chat is working. Cool. I'm actually going to minimize. Let me actually move this over here just so I can move things over. Okay, cool. Whoop. Lost my chat. Why did that happen? Hold tight. Experiencing difficulties. Oh, there we go. Okay, I think I'm back. Sorry about that. I accidentally clicked a shortcut on the thing, but it looks like we're back up and running here. All right, so if you have been to the space or you've chatted with me with any length of time, you know that I'm a big fan of Dungeons and Dragons. Like I've got the DM shirt on today, and Dungeons and Dragons is a great game. We run programs online, so if you're little bored in the home, feel free to contact us. We have a club, and we now we do everything online, but we're planning on running that next Friday. So feel free to reach out. Something else that I would like to mention is while D&D is a fantastic game, sometimes we need a little break. And in my free time, I have been sort of trying to come up with an idea for a Harry Potter RPG. I was actually thinking of doing this a while back because I have a few coworkers who are not necessarily interested in the more Dungeons and Dragons sort of experience, but they all like Harry Potter. So I thought, oh, maybe I'll try running a game. And I looked around, and there isn't really, at least I couldn't find one, there isn't an official Harry Potter role-playing game. So I figured, maybe I'll just write one. And oh boy, was I in for a time. Writing and game design for any role-playing game is pretty difficult because of the sheer amount of things you have to cover. So enough blibbity blobbity blue. Let me try to explain what I've done so far and how I think I need to take a step back. Case in point, I see a couple people coming back on stream. Sorry for the drop. I hit a little button that undid some stuff. So we're just getting started. You're not too far behind. Basically, I want to focus on game design for this. So there isn't going to be a lot of visual stuff in terms of like models or anything like that. This is going to be figuring out game mechanics, how to make the game work. So let me draw your attention over to this document over here. So I sat down and I started thinking about Harry Potter and how it all works, because it's not super crazy detailed. It's got just enough of a foothold in the magic and the experience, and enough to say this is how spells work, but it's not as super detailed compared to something like Dungeons and Dragons. Like case in point, Dungeons and Dragons, you have to make sure you have enough energy for the spell. You have to make sure that it's you have components for certain spells. Some are verbal, some you do hand gestures, some you have to concentrate. Whole bunch of crazy stuff. And that's a good flavor for the game. But Harry Potter, I feel as if you don't want to get bogged down in all of those rules. You want to be able to, as long as you have a wand, and maybe unless you're doing like some sort of potion work or something, you should be able to cast spells pretty regularly. So I was trying to figure out what the major spells should be, and I kind of took inspiration from the Deathly Hallows. So you can see here that we've got the basic triangle where you've got the 3 different items. So if I was I kind of consider this the triangle system where everything has to fit within one of these like parameters. So I figured from what I can tell, like spellcraft is going to be a mixture of focus, wand work, and pronunciation. It's Leviosa, not Leviosa, sort of a deal. I gotta watch those movies again. But, and within those, each school of magic, which there appear to be 3 main schools of magic. Yes, there are other topics, we'll get to that. But we've got Defense Against the Dark Arts, mostly focusing on wand work and focus. Charms, which is a mixture of wand work and pronunciation. And Transfiguration, which relies a little bit more on pronunciation and focus. That's kind of how I figured like each of those areas would combine together. And I figured like there needs to be some sort of like skill enhancement where these will focus into this skill when you're casting a particular spell. So if you maybe have a higher amount of focus versus wand work, then you're going to be better at, say, maybe a little bit better at Defense Against the Dark Arts and Transfiguration, and maybe not so hot with the Charm spell. That's kind of how I'm thinking of it right now. If we scroll down a little bit more, I tried to think about the other classes at Hogwarts. So we've got potions, arithmancy. I'm probably saying that wrong, but I believe it's the study of numbers. Astronomy, flying, divination, care of magical creatures. Hagrid. Love you, Hagrid. Herbology, study of ancient ruins, history of magic, and then in the outlier, the Muggle studies. So again, I was trying to think of this sort of triangle system where we would figure out what are the base components of a witch or wizard or their attributes to be able to do this. Because if you think about it in Harry Potter, there's not really an instance where like the wizards are like, at the gym pumping iron or anything. So unlike D&D where you have a mixture of physical and mental abilities, I think a witch or wizard's main attribute should be all the mental stuff. So I kind of divided up into calculation, so like figuring out numbers and, calculating all different kinds of things. Knowledge, like how much you've studied, and then your observation. And between all of those, that's where the different classes that you study at Hogwarts would fit in. So for example, potions I figured is like calculation because you gotta like measure ingredients and whatnot. Study of ancient, and like it's a mixture of knowledge of like what to mix and how much to mix. Study of ancient runes, leaning a little bit more toward knowledge, but also like figuring out how they relate to each other, versus something like arithmancy, where it's all calculation. There's no other attributes in here, and each of these areas have schools that will focus in on those areas. So like knowledge is all history of magic up here, and that can be played in the game a very specific way. All that kind of stuff, and these will feed off of each other. The thing that I have to figure out now is I don't want, I'm going to come back to that, but basically the idea is like if you have a higher stat in knowledge versus these two, then you're going to be super good at history and magic, and then study of ancient runes and herbology would be good, but you wouldn't be so good at astronomy, flying, and divination, and maybe not so good at the arithmancy. I don't know how to say it. I'm probably spelled it wrong in my document. That's probably why I'm messing up. But it's basically magic arithmetic. Some other things down here, continuing with the triangle system. Physical traits. So I know that I said like strength and toughness don't really come into play in Harry Potter. Like Harry is not like, he's not like lifting super heavy things. Like it does come into play occasionally, but there's usually way tougher creatures. Like if you look at like the basilisk and what other creatures? There's the hippogriff. There's giants. All kinds of stuff. You know, there's no way a witch or wizard is going to be able to match up to this. So this does come into play in some things, but I figured this would kind of be a mixture of your health and how much stuff you can move around. Then there's like your balance and quickness, so I figured that would somehow tie into your defenses a little bit. And then because we are essentially in a school, attractiveness, because it's essentially how charismatic you are. You don't necessarily need to be a runway model. What this more refers to is like how cool you are. So maybe I should come up with a different name for that. But this is like how it's like your reputation basically, in that like, oh, that's the cool kid, or you know, that kind of thing. So this isn't physical necessarily, though it certainly should be if you want to play it that way. So I have a mixture of physical traits, witch and wizard attributes, and then spellcraft skills. So you've got 3 different triangle systems to handle these things. And I think this is good. I really like how this is set out. It does make sense in terms of like where everything is placed. And overall, you really only have 3, 6, 9 primary stats. The problem is I need to figure out a way of how to make that work with the Harry Potter system and not let users get bogged down. Because playing an RPG, like, I don't know if anyone's ever played before, which you're welcome to hop into the chat and say hi and mention what you played and we can chat about it. I didn't get into RPGs until later in my life because the rules there's so many rules and people get very bogged down, which is why I really like the 5th edition of Dungeons and Dragons. It is very easy to follow. All the rules are streamlined. There are a ton of rules, make no mistake, and it's very easy to mess them up, but it's focused enough that it's easy to follow, and that's something I want to grab inspiration from. So let's go over, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new document here, and we're basically going to do some brainstorming. Oh, hey, Rob's in the chat. Hey, Rob. Graphics ops, nice word. Thank you. Yeah, I kind of racked my brain on how to figure out how to put that together. The main thing, again, is making sure that I don't overbog it with rules, because people who want to play in the Harry Potter universe don't want to, spend a half hour calculating damage or like looking up a specific rule set. It's got to be very simple. So I think what we need to do is figure out what the primary features of the Harry Potter universe involve and how we want to highlight those. So let's say, I don't know what I'm going to call this document. Let's call it HP Brainstorm. Okay. And I'm going to say, let's figure out the main features of Harry Potter. So I've kind of divided up the spell system a little bit, so that does make it easier. But let's just list things we see from the movie and how we can derive from that. So when there is spellcraft, like let's focus on combat for a second, because that's going to be a major thing in the Harry Potter thing. So gameplay. So in the movies, it is very fast-paced. That's not how you spell paced. Fast-paced. They do use cover occasionally, so there needs to be something to account for that. I will also say that it's kind of interesting, because if you think about spellcasting, speed is definitely a factor. Because generally, like, the wizard who draws first will often get the first shot. Whether or not they hit, that's a whole other thing. So there is aiming involved, for sure. Aiming versus, getting out of the way, or versus ducking behind cover. That's definitely going to be an aspect of it. I'm trying to think what else, though. I feel like I'm halfway tempted just to pull up the movies just to start watching them and get some more ideas. So let's see. We've got cover, speed, aiming. Then there's, of course, this just comes to mind. It's not really a main feature of combat, but then there's, like, I know when Harry does the whole, like, wand lock thing with old Voldy, the wands lock up, but that's only a very specific case with the 2 wands. I think what was it? They got a harpy, not a harpy feather, it was bird that went up on fire. Phoenix. They both got a feather from the same phoenix, so that's why they were brother wands. So I'll put a little asterisk down here. We'll call it wand locking. I mean, that could be a really cool, unique feature to the game where you encounter a strange wizard and your wands suddenly lock onto each other. You know, that might be kind of cool. Let's see here. Then there's also spell resistance. I know that really high level wizards, they seem to have a resistance to spells being thrown at them. It does depend on. It definitely does appear that they need to be paying attention though, because Harry and Hermione and Ron, this has happened in the final season if I remember correctly, when they were running around from the Death Eaters and whatnot, they were able to surprise way more skilled witches and wizards and like lock them up with what's Hermione's favorite spell? It's like the body lock thing or something. I think that's one of her favorites. Spell resistance versus I'll say attack versus. What do you mean? Get out of here, Final Cut. I don't want. Get out of here. Sorry, it looks like that was a thing from iMovie. So we've got attack versus spell resistance, and that could also be attack versus physical resistance, and that could be that could somehow measure into the actual physical attributes. And then under all of that, were you paying attention? Because that definitely does have a factor to it. Trying to think. So if anyone ever thinks of anything else we can add to this, feel free to pop in the chat. Chat's open right now. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else for combat. I'm gonna think for a moment, but if I can't think of something, then we're gonna start thinking about. We're going to start thinking about how to actually have combat work, because that's going to be the main feature for this, I think. So went over aiming, wand locking, attack, spell resistance. I'm going to just make a note to revisit this later, but there's definitely going to be some sneaking involved. Sneaking and stealth is definitely going to be a big part of this at some point, because if you're not in combat, the wizards are sneaking around, particularly after hours when you should not be. Sneaking around trying to get to the kitchens. What were Ron's brothers' name? George and oh god, this is gonna drive me crazy. George, I can't remember. Oh yeah, thanks, Rob. It is a pretty thorough list. I think we covered most of it. There's probably some more specifics, but we'll probably come back to this. All right, so let's actually split the windows here. Whoop, come on. Because I want to, oh, I don't have the auto split thing. All right, because I want to take a look at this. And I want to refer to that triangle diagram at the same time. What did I call it? I called it my triangle system. Here we go. So we're gonna refer to this as we go through. But let's paint a scenario, right? And let's see if we can come up with some ideas on how to handle this. So let's say you are walking through the Forbidden Forest. You're out late at night. You're not supposed to be, like all students. And so let's say student out at night in the Forbidden Forest. Why is it whenever something is labeled forbidden, we inevitably end up going there? Oh, Fred. Thank you, Rob. George and Fred. God, that took me way longer. All right, good to know. I will keep that in mind. So you're a student out at night in the Forbidden Forest, and let's say you are, let's just enter combat. You know, we're gonna forget about the external things, like forget that you were sneaking, Forget that they got the jump on you, whatever it might be. Let's just say that you're in combat. So what's one of the cool creatures you could fight in the Forbidden Forest? I know there's a ton of stuff. We could say a centaur. They tend to be neutral unless you make them mad. We could say a giant spider. I know Aragog's children are out there running around. So let's say we need a name for our wizard. What's a good name for our wizard? I will say... Todd Mickleworth. Yeah. Todd Mickleworth versus the giant spider. Alright. So, let's say... So normally what we do in a lot of RPGs is it's turn-based. And I have no reason to, I don't think you can do an RPG without making it turn-based. So this is definitely turn-based. We're going to say that the order for this is Todd Mickleworth versus the giant spider. Alright, so let's say Todd goes first. Okay. And I happen to... Whoa. Let's get this back over here. Alright. So let's say Todd wants to cast a spell. And these are like some first-year spells that I looked up on a wiki here. So we've got the spell name, the incantation, and then the spell type. Okay. So again, fitting into one of the three areas: charms, defense against the dark arts, transfiguration. And oddly enough, I think I don't know who did it, but someone actually had a really cool definition for these three areas. Transfiguration being the magic that changes the form or appearance of a magical object, and then charms being magic that adds certain properties to an object or creature. So those two kind of like balance each other out, which I thought was pretty cool. And then defense against the dark arts is defensive and offensive magic. Defense against dark creatures. Well, I mean, we've used it in a couple other instances. But anyway, we've got a spell list here, and I'm thinking. So I guess it depends on how you would want to play it. But let's say we want to do a fire-making spell. Maybe try and scare the spider off. Maybe we try to like cast it. I know this is a fire-making spell. It's not a fireball per se, but let's just, for the sake of argument, say it's a fireball spell, right? So you're a player at the table. You got your wand. You say Incendio, and you cast it at the spider. So what do we do now? What do we compare it against? So let's go against our sheet here. All right. So Incendio is a transfiguration spell. So that relies on... So Todd casts Incendio, which uses pronunciation and focus. All right. And now, I think what would be... This is where we have to figure out if casting the spell is even successful, because this is where it's going to get interesting. How do we determine how successful the spell is cast? Because it is possible for a student not be able to cast the spell, right? So, do we have a check for that first? So, Todd checks if he is successful. And, I would guess that there needs to be, you know what, we could do it this way. So one thing we could do is, let's say that for the purposes of this, let's give Todd some stats. All right, we're going to give him some spellcraft skills here. We'll keep it small. So we'll say 3, we'll assign him points in increments of 3, 2, and 1. So turn-based, Todd Mickleworth. See, all right, chat's fine. Let's give Todd some stats. Todd, spellcraft skills. All right. We'll say for the purposes of this that I don't know. Do we think that what kind of character is Todd here? with a last name like Mickleworth. I'm guessing he's got poor pronunciation, but he's got better wand work and focus. So I'm going to give him a 3 in focus. We'll give him a 2 in pronunciation. Pronunciation. I still spelled it wrong. P-R-O-N-U-N. I forgot the N. Pronunciation. Spelling's important, kids. Let's see here. Pronunciation. And what do we say? There's 1 left. So 1 in wand work. Right? So I think what we could do for that is we can have this essentially be a bonus. So no matter what kind of spells you cast, whatever die you roll, you can add these to your bonus. So for example, because that way it doesn't limit you from casting any spell if you're weak in one area. It just means that you're less likely to succeed. So why don't we say that Todd, because this is a is it a transfiguration spell? Hold on. No, it is a transfiguration spell. Okay. So because this is a Incendio, pronunciation and focus, transfiguration. Todd checks if he is successful. Todd, I'm getting some Baldur's Gate, vibes here. When you used to, for the old timers, when you were playing certain RPGs, there was often a bar at the bottom that would list what was going on in the background, so you didn't have to pay attention to it, but you could see all the rolls that were going on behind the background, this is kind of what I'm getting a vibe from. So let's see. Todd has a bonus of focus and pronunciation. He has a bonus of +5 to the roll, maybe. All right. Now we need to figure out. So he's got a bonus of +5, whatever that means. We need to figure out if he is still successful in casting the spell. So how do we do that? So this is a level 1 spell. Because one thing I want to do is we need to figure out how to handle the spells, and this is a big part of it as well. Because if we just have player, like imagine this for a second, like in the Harry Potter universe, right? The minute that you go to the forbidden section of the library or whatever it might be, and you find an old spell book and you look up, a crazy powerful spell, like, I don't know, Time Stop or something, right? And you practice with it, then in theory, that character in the movie can cast it really easily. There's nothing to stop them from trying. I do think to keep the game balanced, because you don't want to overpower people, at least not too quickly, we need to establish that it's going to take some time for you to get trained up. Like, I don't think it makes sense for a first-year student to be able to cast, like, a 7th-year student spell. You know what I mean? So we need to figure out how to handle that. So we need to think of a system for that as well. That could be, let's see. So I kind of had this idea of rolling a pool of dice. So, for example, when you have... So I guess, do we want to have them roll dice for each of these and then add the bonus afterwards? For example, do we want to have them roll... Let's say you're a first-year student, and to see if you even cast the spell, you have to roll 3d4 dice. And if you're not familiar with dice acronyms from D&D, basically this means that you roll 3 4-sided dice. That's just a shorthand. Oh, you can't see my notes. That is annoying. You know what? Let me change my window here real quick. Or can I scroll down? Yeah, I'll scroll down. That's fine. All right, cool. So, do we have them roll 3d4 dice, and then we have a number to compare that to? For example, let's say the Incendio has a spell rating of, I don't know, It's a first year spell. Let's say, I don't know, 9 for whatever reason, right? So we could roll 3d4, and I'm actually curious what the average is for rolling 3d4. So I'm actually going to use a quick online application. Let's go to, I apologize if this is like bouncing all over the place, but writing RPGs is tough. You know, I think I've done a little bit of groundwork, but you just got, it's a matter of experimentation and ideas. So let's go to average dice rolls, and I'm pretty sure there was an online thing that would help you calculate the stats. Oh, was it this one? Oh no, here we go. So this is kind of a cool little website that somebody put together. It'll basically give you the bell curve of stats for, you know, what is likely to roll, with, you know, the middle of the curve here being the most likely. So if you were to roll 3 6-sided dice, it's more likely you're going to roll 10s and 11s versus, you know, the maximum, which is 18. So let's roll 3d4. So you're very likely to roll a 7 or an 8 on its own. So very likely that the spell will be successful. And then, so let's say he rolls a 6, but he adds his 5. The spell is successful. So let's see here. So let's say rolls 3d4, rolls a 6 plus 5, which equals 11. And then Incendio has a spell rating of 9, so the spell is successful. Now, the only problem I can see with this, right? I want to try to avoid relying on numbers for everything, because, so in other words, like, you had a long day at work, you sit down, and then the last thing you want to do, there's going to be some number crunching, but I don't want the player to necessarily worry too much about the target number, because the other thing we have to worry about is, let's see here. Like with the, what did we say before? With aiming, because we said aiming is going to be a thing. I think it depends on the range of the spell, possibly, but I'm probably getting ahead of myself. But I think it makes sense to, instead of giving it a spell rating of 9, to determine what a success is. Like, for example, the other system we could do with that, so we're still figuring out, so system 1, we'll say, and again, my screen is being blocked. I'm gonna move my window here, because I don't think I'm going to remember to keep moving things around. Let me see, I think it's this one, yes. Oh, well, not let me move it because I'm streaming. Wah, wah. Oh, I have it locked, that's why. All right, let's move, listen you, let's move this over here for right now, and can I flip it? Transform, or no, flip horizontal, haha, and we'll do that. Much better. I'll flip that back afterwards. All right, so that's kind of the system 1, rolling a pool of dice, and then system 2 that I was kind of thinking of was, I will relock this, by the way. The second system I was thinking of was measuring success. Where's my underline? So let's go to a second page here. So the idea of measuring success, rather than comparing a bunch of numbers and adding them all up, I was wondering if it makes more sense to have a spell requires, say, 3 successes for it to be successful. So, for example, let's say Incendio requires 2 successes. Because the other thing that also makes sense is there are some spells that, you know, a first year should not be able to cast, just because it is beyond their skill of knowledge. So I kind of like say for example, Incendio, which just requires 2 successes, but say, I don't know, the body binding curse, which is like, you know, crazy stuff, that requires like 8 successes or something, you know, something really high. And we can figure out what that scale is. So Incendio requires 2 successes. So we could still roll 3d4, but then count the successes on each of the die. So the idea is that a success is 3 or higher. So let me just see what the percentage is for just rolling a 1d4. It's all 25. I should have known. Okay, so let's see what we get here. So I guess this actually wouldn't tell me what would be successful because we're counting each individual die. So there's a 50% chance that you'll get a success. So, oh, how do we do math? How do we do? So if you have a 50% on each die, oh, where are the stat majors when you need them? 50% on each die. Like all together total, do you measure those together? I don't know. I barely got through statistics when I was in college. So if anyone knows how to measure stats, please, chat is open. we'll pick that up. I was trying to determine what the overall success would be. But I honestly don't know how to measure that. So let's say you get so that's 50% on each die. So what we could do, because this could be a lot easier for the player so they don't have to do a lot of number crunching, in that a success is 3 or higher. So we roll them. If we get at least 2 die that have a 3 or higher, then the spell is successfully cast. So then maybe instead of adding this to the success of the spell, we add it to other factors like the aiming or something, like, or maybe your spell attack could be a thing. So success of 3 or higher, the spell is cast, and I kind of like this system a little bit more because it's a little bit simpler. But I also kind of like, stop touching the face. I kind of like how this is added in. I think we could figure out how to get this into this. That would be good. Let me go on a limb here because I kind of like this measuring its success. Because the other fear I have with this particular system is you're going to get ridiculous numbers really easily, and I want this to be able. I want very young adults and children to be able to play this easily. And not that they can't do math, but when you've got, you know, a level 50 spell or a level 50 rating for it to be successful, that might be really tough to calculate very quickly. You're going to keep other people waiting, and, you know, it's going to bog things down a little bit. So I think this is going to be the way to go. So let's go back to our... Let me actually copy this. I'm going to copy this to another document. No, do not. Please tell me you're saved. All right, so let me open up another document here. And let's call this System Brainstorm. And let's... Oh, did I create a folder? I did create a folder. I didn't want to create a folder. We're going to remove that. I know, riveting stuff, guys, watching me create folders and documents, but, you know, that's where all the ideas come from. You don't necessarily need to start drawing or modeling something in 3D. Sometimes it comes down to the idea. Let's see here. So we're going to call this we're going to call this System Brainstorm. But again, I am keeping everything organized. That's very important. All right, so we've got this kind of two ideas for a system of casting magic in Harry Potter. Of course, because I'm using a Mac, all the shortcuts are different. I have a Windows PC at home, so it varies. Come on, paste. Cool. So I'm going to take this out of here for right now, just so it's not bogging us down, because I want to go back to our scenario. Okay, story mode. All right, so we have Todd Mickleworth. He's in the Forbidden Forest. I don't know what accent this is. He's in the Forbidden Forest. Comes upon a giant spider. He casts Incendio. And assuming that we're using this system here. So, let's say he rolls. So, using system 2. He rolls 3d4. 2 dice, just in the scenario, let's say. 2 dice are successful. The spell is cast. I'm using this as an attack spell, essentially, but Incendio is meant to create fire. It's not like a fire bolt or something. We're bending the rules a little bit for this scenario. All right, so we've got Incendio cast. Now the question is, we've successfully cast the spell. Does it hit the spider is the question. So we could even say this is another wizard, for example. So the question here is, I don't think... so I know in Dungeons & Dragons they have something called armor class, which is a combination of the armor you're wearing and how fast you are, right? I don't think any of the characters in Harry Potter wear armor. It definitely seems like that would be a little bit more of a hindrance, at least not that I remember. You're welcome to hop in the chat and correct me because it's been a while since I've watched the movies. But I don't think they really wear armor. So the question is, let's go back to this physical attribute wheel here. What makes sense? This isn't really a spell you're trying to resist per se. It's not like a mind sort of, mind meld sort of attack thing. There's definitely something that will come into play for that, but I would think the balance and quickness would definitely go into that. So the spell is cast. The question is, do you hit? And I don't want there to be too many checks here, because if you have to cast the spell, aim, check and see if it hits the creature, then do damage, and then see if you resist, that's going to be a lot of layers to check. Sorry, I keep wobbling the screen. There's going to be a lot of things to check for you to get through the game. And I don't want it to be super crazy fast-paced, but I don't want it to get bogged down either. So let's list realistically what that would look like, and then we can start to take certain things out. So the spell is cast, so I guess in this system then the check and see if the spell is successful. Well, I guess you would aim first, technically. Aim your wand. Right. Check and see if the spell is successful. It fires towards... I guess there are some spells that you don't even need to aim, though, really. Like the... I am recalling a moment where Hermione is using the body lock on Neville. It's like I think it's in the first movie, and she does the crystal tile. I forget, but she does the body lock thing, and I don't recall if she aimed or if it was more of a general motion. So we'll have to see with that. But anyway, it fires toward the opponent. They either attempt to get out of the way or dodge. Well, I guess you could also deflect out of the way. I guess we could have several systems here, because there's a couple things that you can do when attempting to when it comes to spells, right? Because there's a couple ways that wizards can get around it. So they attempt to... So I guess we have the opponent attempts a few things. Did I spell that wrong? Oh, it's just waiting for a grammar thing. Okay. So the opponent either attempts to dodge, get out of the way. They attempt to dodge. They also attempt to deflect the spell. I know wizards in particular like to do that. I know when we get to later parts of the movie, they're just flinging spells around like it's nobody's business. So they attempt to deflect the spell. Depending on the spell, they attempt to resist it. So this could be a mental or a physical thing. Is there anything else in terms of, like, once a spell is cast at you, is there anything else that you can possibly do? You can hide around cover, I guess. Well, I guess that's like attempt to dodge or get out of the way. So I'm thinking about it. So the opponent attempts to dodge or get out of the way or deflect the spell entirely. Then let's say the spell either misses or it hits them. Because obviously if it misses them, then combat, or at least that particular turn of combat, is done. And then it goes over to the other person, or it hits them. So assuming it hits them, they attempt to resist it mentally or physically, depending on if it does damage or whatnot. And then if they fail, they either take damage or fall under the spell. Let's see here. Sorry, I think someone was just banging on the door real quick. Let me see here. If they fail, they take damage or fall under the spell. If they succeed, if they succeed, they're fine. Okay. So, I think we figured out the basic sort of outline for what realistically happens based on the movies and like the action that we see there. However, this is a lot of stuff. Like if you're sitting down at a table after being at school or at work and you got to go, nope, 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 like a checkbox, this is going to be boring. So I think we need to figure out how to take this and narrow it down a little bit. I think we should keep it in line with the triangle system that I developed there. At most should be 3 things that happen to determine, what goes down. So let's see here. So I definitely think this should be This is where it gets tough because we're trying to determine, like, all right, the spell is cast. Do we just have it automatically hit if it meets a certain threshold or a number or something? Or do we have them dodge or give them the opportunity to dodge? I think it depends on, like, obviously if they're surprised, like you ring around the corner and go, boop, then obviously, that shouldn't matter too much. This is tough. Let's see. So aim your wand. I don't know. I mean, I would assume that if you're aiming your wand, if you're already like casting the spell, you're kind of aiming your wand already, unless there is a specific like trick shot you're trying to do, then I don't think we should have the player aim or something. I'm trying to think. I think strength and toughness. I'm trying to think how to like bring this in a little bit. What is this? All right, that was something else. Okay, cool. So if you guys have any thoughts in the chat, let me know, because this is where it's going to get a little tough, and I do plan on releasing this for public use. I'm not going to hang on to this because this sounds like it could be a really fun time. So I plan on releasing this. I don't know. I'll put a blast out or something. But let's see. Aim your wand. All right, you're at the table. Actually, that's a good question. I need to come up with a name for like the person running the game. Like you've got Dungeon Master for D&D, you've got the Keeper for like Call of Cthulhu. We need a name for a person running the game. Headmaster? I don't know. We'll play around with that. But, all right, you're at the table. Guy asks you, all right, roll 3d4 to see if you are successful. You get 2 dice, which are successful, assuming success is a 3 and plus. Excuse me. Spell is cast. You aim your wand. I would say we could probably eliminate this because you already took the time to see if the spell is successful. I don't want there to be another check because that just means you double your failure. And that doesn't feel great. So I think we're going to take this out. So check and see if the spell is successful. It fires toward the opponent. Now, the question here is, the opponent can attempt to dodge and get out of the way or deflect the spell. I think I like this because it gives the person a chance to defend themselves. Like, I don't think we're going to have a lot of HP in Harry Potter. Generally, when characters get hit a few times, like, I think Harry gets scruffed up and banged around, but he doesn't suffer, like, any crazy wounds or anything. So I'm thinking, like, you shouldn't have a super crazy big HP bar. I think it should come down to, like, hits or damages or something. So I think we're going to definitely include this. So it fires toward the opponent. Let's say, all right, so he's in the woods, cast the spell. The spider attempts to, let's see. So he can either... Well, let's keep it in line with the fire spell. So this is clearly going to be a dodge thing. Like, it does not like fire. The spider attempts to dodge. Then the question is, how do we measure that success? Do we take it into account the spell casting thing that we had earlier? So you need to get a combination of 5 or higher. Does that make sense? Because he's using these 2 skills to cast the spell. So maybe this is like his measure of how difficult that difficulty level is. So like I know in D&D, and I know I keep making comparisons because it's a really great system. In D&D, you have something called a spell save, and that's universal across the board. I think that makes sense due to the sheer amount of spells. But because we're working with so many spells, I think it makes sense to have a different difficulty depending on the type of spell you're attempting to cast. Because you're going to be better at certain spells than other ones. Like Harry's really good at Defense Against the Dark Arts. And like I think Hermione was better at Transfiguration. Harry was pretty good with Charms too, if I remember right. He just wasn't so good on the Transfiguration. So I have a sneaky feeling if Harry Potter were in the game, his pronunciation would be slightly lower compared to his classmates. Sorry, I think I'm spinning a little bit. I'm getting excited. We're figuring it out. So I think the opponent attempts to dodge or get out of the way. Now, assuming the spider isn't behind cover already, I don't think he gets any bonuses for that. So the spider attempts to dodge. The difficulty is 5, right? So maybe instead of a bonus here, we'll say... Because this is in System 2. I'm going to move that over to... Nope, that's my old notes. Where did this go? Nope. The copy and paste is different! Stop it. Alright, hold on. Copy. See, this is even more difficult because I'm using a Windows keyboard with a Mac machine. The reason we did that, though, is because the Mac keyboards and the mice all required batteries. So we were going through them like crazy. All right. So, Attempts to dodge, the difficulty is 5. Now, do we have him roll? Like, what do we have him roll to see if he is successful? Do we have him... let's see what we've got in terms of aspect of magic here. Do we have him roll... So my guess is... Because if we have it just a straight number, for example, if your dodge is too low, does it automatically hit? I feel like there should be a roll involved, for sure, depending on the level of the spell. So if we look at, say, I don't know, let's go back to, so we're gonna stick with Incendio because we're gonna go cross-eyed if we look at all the different spells. So the question is, sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. I think if we don't have a dice roll associated with the dodge, then the chances of this is where I'm having a little bit of a thing, because I don't want the player to fail very, very often, because then they're not going to want to play. There should be a very even playing ground here for the monsters and for the people playing, or the players at the table. So, I keep touching my face. I gotta stop doing that. I don't know. Chat, you have any ideas? I'm thinking a little bit. I think for now, let's assume that there's a dice roll involved, because again, we're not going to have a lot of HP. So let's go with that for right now. Chat, if you chime in with any ideas, you're more than welcome to. Let me see here. So attempts to dodge out of the way. So we've got a 5 as the difficulty. The spell we said was we needed 2 successes. Do we say, because then this kind of messes up the system then, because we've already got difficulty is 5. We're running a little bit low on time because I've only got about 3 minutes. I want to think about this a little bit more, but we're kind of honing in on the system a little bit. I like this sort of success versus failure, because it doesn't require a lot of addition. And I think that's going to come in handy. We should probably keep that going, because once people start hearing, you know, you have to add stuff, then it can make some people a little wary. And I want this to be very easy entry. So I think we're gonna put a pin in that for right now. And I might wrap up a little early. So I'll wait a few moments, because I know the stream is a little behind real time. So you guys are lagging just a little bit. So I'll give it another minute, and let me just see if there's anything else in here we can show off while I see if chat wants to chime in. But I plan on doing this again maybe next Friday. I'll continue this. I might work on this in my free time a little bit, but we will definitely do this again if this is of interest. So like the video if you enjoyed it. In terms of a schedule for next week, however, we're going to be continuing with the morning streams at 10 a.m. In fact, we just put out a schedule, so look on our Twitter page, our Facebook account, so you'll see that we're doing projects every day. I specifically stream on Thursday and Friday morning, and I do project live streams on Friday at 2. And I'm doing the D&D club on Friday evenings. We just reinstituted that, so feel free to reach out if you have any questions. But yeah, I think I'm good for right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream. If you want to tune in next time, we'll see if we can cook up some ideas for this system. But I'm gonna call it a day. Got some things to wrap up. Wishing you all a happy Friday. See you guys.